What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're making smoked pork butt on a pellet grill. All right, so we've got ourselves an 8.5 pound pork butt from our local Sam's Club. So as far as trimming goes, you'll want to take off anything that's just kind of hanging off. So stuff like this, little flaps, you'll want to take those off. So typically not a whole lot of trimming that you need to do. For me, on my pellet grill, I like to go ahead and take off majority of the fat cap. That just gives a little bit extra surface area for the seasoning to adhere. So we'll go ahead and start taking that off now. All right, so let's start trimming off this fat cap. So two things that'll make this a lot easier is a very sharp knife and a cold piece of meat. So just make sure that you let this pork butt sit in your refrigerator overnight before you start cutting into it. All right, so we got our trimming work done. Majority of this fat cap's been removed, so now all that's left is to put on the binder, season it up, and let it rest for a bit before we put it on the smoker. All right, so we got our second pork butt here. Like I said on the previous one, I typically take the fat cap completely off to allow some extra area for that seasoning to adhere. I really like doing that. To me, it adds extra flavor, extra bark. On this one, we'll score the fat cap just to have a comparison between the two. I've never done two separate methods at once before, so we'll try both ways and do a head-to-head and see which one we like better. All right, so to score it, you're just going to make some cuts across, and we're just going to make hatch marks or diamond marks. And as you can see here, I've got a pretty big gash here from the butchering process, which will be fine. We'll just go ahead and cut across that one anyways. So typically what this does is this allows for your fat cap to render better during the smoking process. And we'll see how that works out during this video. So depending on your type of cooker, you may want to leave the fat cap on. So I'm cooking today on the Pitts Spitts Maverick 1250. Has pretty good heat control, minimal hot spots, so I don't really have to worry about burning the pork butt. But my old grill was a Pit Boss, and it had quite a few hot spots. So what I would typically do is take the pork butt and cook it fat side down, and let that fat cap protect the rest of the pork butt so that I didn't have to worry about burning. So on this one, what we'll do is we'll cook this one fat side up and see if we can get this fat cap rendered properly. All right, so we need a clean hand. We'll go ahead and take one of these gloves off. First thing we want to do is put on our binder, which we're going to use some yellow mustard. This won't impact the flavor at all. It's just going to be a binder to help the seasoning adhere. So I used to not use a binder, but I've used it quite a few times now, and I feel like I get a lot better coverage with the seasoning when you do use a binder. So for seasoning today, we're just using something I put together at home. So a little salt, pepper, garlic, cumin, smoked paprika, and onion powder. We'll put the full recipe in a link down in the description. So this is a big cut of meat, so make sure we're seasoning fairly liberally. All right, so we've got this thing seasoned up. We're going to let it rest for about 30 minutes just to let that seasoning adhere and let it start to sweat out. So these pork butts have been hanging out now for about 45 minutes, and they smell amazing with the homemade seasoning. We'll see you out at the smoker in just a few minutes. All right, we're back outside with the Maverick Pitts Spitts 1250 at 265 degrees. Just a quick note on temperature. You can cook these pork butts anywhere from about 200 degrees to 270, 275. You want to adjust that temperature based on when you want your meats to come off of the smoker. At 265 degrees on this smoker with those size pork butts, I would expect these to cook anywhere from about 9 to 10 hours until they're ready to come off. If you're new or you've got a new smoker, I would recommend cooking at a lower temperature as it's a lot more forgiving. All right, so let's get these pork butts on the smoker. All right, so we'll go on with these. This first one still has the fat cap on. That's the one we scored. We're gonna go ahead and put it on fat cap up. And the second one, not really gonna matter. We'll just put it on right next to it. So we'll go ahead and close these up. We'll probably rotate them around a couple times just to make sure they cook evenly every few hours. We'll also open it up and spritz it with about a half and half mixture between apple cider vinegar and water once the bark starts to look a little dry. All right, we're back outside. It's been about 2.5 hours. The pork butt on the left is the one that's got the fat cap. It still looks pretty wet. The one on the right looks a little dry, and we'll probably spritz it a little more heavily. All right, we'll close it up, come back and check on it in a bit. All right, so we're back outside. The bark on both these pork butts look great. The one with the fat cap, temping 166. And our smaller pork butt about 172. So both of these are ready to come off and wrap. All right, we're back inside with our pork butts in a full pan. We're gonna add some liquid and a few ingredients, and then we'll be ready to wrap. All right, so to our pork butt, we'll first add the liquid in the bottom of the pan. So this is 1/4 cup water, 1/4 cup apple cider vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So we'll just add that right to the bottom of the pan. Next, we'll add 3 crushed cloves of garlic for some aromatics. Then we'll add some additional seasoning right on top. Then we just need to cover with some tin foil, and we're ready to go. Make sure to wrap it tight. And we'll see you back outside at the smoker. All right, we're back outside with our wrapped pork butts ready to go back on the smoker. All right, so pork butts back on. We're still holding at 265 degrees. The pork butts are at about 165 degrees internal temperature. We want to get those up to about 200. At that point, we'll start probing for, we'll start checking for probe tender. All right, we're out at the smoker with the last pork butt. Let's see what it's temping now. At about 208, and we're a nice probe tender. Yeah, right at about 208 degrees. So we're gonna take this inside, let it rest for about an hour, and then we'll give it a taste test. All right, this pork butt looks great. Tons of juice. We're gonna have to get that juice out of there. We wanna save that. Looks like fat rendered down pretty well. So we got our fat separator here. We're gonna go ahead and strain off all this juice, and we'll save it for later. All right, let's see if I can do this and hopefully not make too much of a mess. All right. A little bit of a mess. That's what the towel's for. Not too bad. So this is the one that we cut away the fat cap, by the way. Turn it around this way so you guys can see the bone pull. All right, let's see how we did. Coming right out of there. Pretty clean bone pull. Snack for the chef. Oh yeah, super easy to pull apart. One of the things I do like about taking off the fat cap, other than the fact that you get a lot more area for your bark, is you don't have to worry about taking that fat cap out whenever you're pulling it. So that's something that you're not going to leave in. It's way too fatty. Typically you're going to get in there, you're just going to have to pull that out and throw all that away in the garbage, or at least typically I do. So this looks great. All the different muscles, don't want to let it get away. So the different muscles there, you just want to make sure that you get them all mixed together pretty well. Look at that. Nice and tender. You can't beat that. Very juicy, still retained a lot of moisture. Okay, so we realized we didn't get the video of the pork butt with the scored fat cap, but I couldn't tell the difference moisture-wise, flavor-wise. They were exactly the same to me. The only reason I can see leaving the fat cap on for me personally is if I'm working with an aggressive heat source and I'm trying to protect the meat from burning. All right, so this would be great as is, but we're gonna cut for just a second. I'm gonna go get some buns and we're gonna make a barbecue pulled pork sandwich. All right, so first thing we gotta do, we gotta dust this pulled pork with a little bit of extra seasoning. Make sure we got plenty of flavor. All right, we're gonna mix that back in. The other thing we're gonna do is go in with a little bit of our juice. So if you really wanna make sure your pulled pork is juicy, make sure you've got your fat separator with your extra juice. You can see, maybe in the camera, you can see a little bit of that, the fat on top starting to separate a bit. So we're gonna go back in with just a little bit of it here. Make sure that's gonna be nice and juicy. Give that another mix. All right, so we gotta give this a try. All right, so we're gonna go right in with this. Pile it high. Oh yeah. So we're gonna go in with some Meat Mitch barbecue womp sauce. This is the only sauce I like on my pulled pork sandwiches. Oh yeah, there we go. All right, so we've got our smoked pork butt. It's 4th of July weekend, and we thought, what would pair better with this than Cajun's Cut Special Veterans Edition bourbon? So let's give this a pour. So 114.2 proof. I picked this up at this year's Big Bourbon Block Party at Spillway Wine and Liquor in Brandon, Mississippi. Not too big of a pour. So let's dig into this pulled pork. That's really good. Smoky, savory. The barbecue sauce gives it the right amount of sweet and tangy as it's looking for. Fantastic pulled pork sandwich. All right, so let's give this bourbon a try. So it's smooth with a little bit of sweet and enough spice to stand up to the tangy of the barbecue sauce without completely overpowering it. If you're cooking low and slow, This is the pour that keeps pace. So that's it for today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment down below. Catch you in the next video.